there, how's it going? Welcome back to the Pixie Art Show. If you're new, welcome. Pull up a seat and hang out for a bit. I'm Pixie and I like to draw and talk about stuff, so that's what I do here. And now without further ado, let's get into the video. First, I want you to think about your favorite show, movie, or book, and all the characters in that story. Is there a character that you just absolutely despise? A character that almost ruins the whole story just by being there. We all have at least one character in media that we just can't stand. And sometimes these characters are universally hated throughout the entire fandom. And while there are times when the hate is definitely deserved, Griffith from Berserk is one that immediately comes to mind, there are other characters that get a lot of hate that may not be all that deserved. Chibiusa, aka Usagi Tsukino, or Small Lady, daughter of Neo Queen Serenity. She's a cute pink-haired little girl with mommy issues and the weight of saving the 30th century Crystal Tokyo on her shoulders. And she is one of the most hated characters in the entire Sailor Moon series, even more so than some of the villains. So let's take a look at Chibiusa and see if all the hate is truly deserved. Her introduction into the series is pretty sudden. Usagi and Mamoru are in the park, sharing a kiss when Chibiusa just falls out of the sky, lands on Usagi's head, accidentally kisses Mamoru, and then turns around and points a gun at Usagi, demanding to be given the legendary silver crystal. Now, the gun is actually a toy, but still, that's a pretty wild introduction. Especially when Chibiusa next brainwashes Usagi's family into thinking she's part of the family. And this is all before we have any idea of what's going on, or who this girl really is, or where she even came from. Now, full disclosure, I've only watched the first season of the original 90s anime, and roughly half-ish of Sailor Moon R, which is where Chibiusa comes in. But I do remember watching bits and pieces of the original DIC dub when I was a kid, and finding Chibiusa, or Rini as she was known in the first dubs, to be the most annoying and bratty character I'd ever seen, and I hated her for years after that. But then I watched Crystal, and finally got around to reading the manga, and Chibiusa is really not that bad in the original story. She is still a bit bratty, but in Crystal and the manga, we find out that she's actually 900 years old, but her growth has been stunted. Now, it's never fully stated why her growth has been stunted, but it could be partly due to the effects of the future silver crystal, which was stated to extend people's lifespans. And Chibiusa is also full of self-doubt, as she hasn't awoken to her powers as a Sailor Guardian, or the Princess of the Silver Millennium. She's unable to use the power of the silver crystal. She's also bullied by her classmates, who often question if she's even actually the princess, telling her, well, she must be an imposter because she doesn't look like her parents. She's also dealing with feeling like her mother doesn't love her and is just cold and strict with her. Now, Neo Queen Serenity does, in fact, love her daughter very much. But between being queen of both the Earth and Moon, and having to use her powers to keep everyone safe, she's probably a pretty busy lady. She also doesn't have the ability to transform into Sailor Moon anymore, so training her daughter as a Sailor Guardian is probably out. And don't forget, Neo Queen Serenity is still very much Usagi, and we know Usagi isn't always great with things. I mean, you could argue she's had almost 1,000 years or so to learn how to be a mom and properly train her daughter. But she does realize near the end of the Black Moon arc that she was colder to Chibiusa than she probably meant to be, and she does apologize for putting some pretty big expectations on Chibiusa. And even with King Endymion telling Chibiusa stories about when her mom was Sailor Moon, she's only ever known her mom as the Queen, so she can't see her mother as this fearless warrior who fought for love and justice. Neo Queen Serenity is regal and cold and strict. So Chibiusa grows up, sort of, feeling alone and powerless. It's not until she accidentally stumbles upon the solitary Sailor Pluto guarding the Door of Time that she finally makes a friend that she can talk to. Now, she does make a huge mistake, which is essentially the reason for the Black Moon Clan defeating Serenity and taking over Crystal Tokyo. Because of the bullying, Chibiusa steals the silver crystal, intending to show it to the bullies as proof that she is in fact the princess. So when the Black Moon Clan attacks, Serenity doesn't have the silver crystal, and her powers alone aren't enough to stop the attack. Chibiusa's whole world is thrown into chaos, and she ends up traveling back in time. Now, in the 90s anime, Pluto helps her with this, but in Crystal in the manga, Chibiusa actually steals a time key from Pluto to go back. And she believes that if she can find Sailor Moon, she can save her mom in Crystal Tokyo. So you've got this traumatized little girl, or however old, trauma has no age limit, thrown into a world she's unfamiliar with, trying to find a legendary superhero, and she's for the most part completely alone. And when she finds out Usagi is Sailor Moon, and by extension her mother, she's thrown for another loop. There is no way this whiny crybaby could possibly be the legendary Sailor Moon, much less the powerful regal queen she knows as her mother. We love Usagi, but she is a bit of a mess. So yeah, the poor girl has a lot going on. She's scared and being hunted by the Black Moon Clan, all piled on top of the guilt she feels for taking the silver crystal and leaving Crystal Tokyo vulnerable. Now, we can argue that, she is 900 years old, so technically she's an adult, but she's also still treated like a child by everybody around her. And with all the self-doubt and living in her mother's shadow, wanting so badly to grow into a beautiful woman just like her mom, it's not just her physical growth that's stunted. Her emotional and mental growth is stunted as well. Now, once she awakens to her powers, she starts growing again. And as the story progresses, she does start to mature and become her own person. This is much more evident in Crystal and the manga. The 90s anime really played up her brattiness, and the original dubs made it even worse on top of that. Now, we probably can't have a video about the hate for Chibiusa without at least briefly talking about the crush she has on her dad. Well, the young version of her dad. And yeah, it is kind of weird and not really necessary to the story. I'm not going to sit here and push Western standards onto a Japanese story. Different cultures and all. But I can kind of understand why Chibiusa feels this way. Mamoru was the first person other than her dad and Pluto that showed her the care and kindness she was probably craving. Once again, this is played up way more in the 90s anime. She even keeps up the rivalry with Usagi because she knows it gets under Usagi's skin. In the manga, Chibiusa knows her feelings are wrong, and she eventually lets them go, hoping that someday she's able to find someone who loves her the way Mamoru loves Usagi. Now, we're getting close to the end of the video here, so I'm not actually going to go into the Black Lady part of her story. Chibiusa was at a really low point at that point, and she was brainwashed by Wiseman, a member of the brains behind the Black Moon Clan. So what she did as Black Lady isn't really necessarily her fault. No one blamed Mamoru for what he did while brainwashed, and he was a real jerk every time that happened. Like, super mean, horrible. Anyway, so yeah, in my opinion, I think a lot of the hate Chibiusa gets is mostly undeserved. Or at least deserved only if all you've seen was the awful original dub. I get that the original 90s dubs are nostalgic, but the story was butchered and over-censored and just not as great as everyone seems to remember. Chibiusa is a much more complex and nuanced character than she's given credit for, and has a lot of really good character growth. It's just a shame that the 90s anime, even the sub, didn't seem to explore that more later on. But what do you think? Do you agree that the hate she gets is undeserved? Or is she the most horrible and vile character that almost ruins an otherwise fantastic story? Let me know in the comments. And remember to check the description for other socials to follow me on. Thank you all so much for watching. You're all absolutely awesome, and I'll see you all later. Bye for now.